At that time, or at the time, this meant that such a bar of gold, now this is 1957, correction, they're referring to 1925. The book was written in 1957. At the time, this meant that such a bar of gold was worth about $8,268. Well, that was at the so-called official price of $20.67 an ounce. You multiply 20.67 by 400, and you'll get $8,268. However, that was not the price of gold. That's another myth, and we're going to cover that in another broadcast. They went on to say, this limitation on the redemption privilege, so it's not a right. It was supposed to be your gold, but you can't get it back. It's now just a privilege to get the gold back that was once yours. This limitation on the redemption privilege tended to discourage individuals from asking for gold. Discourage, I guess. You had to be able to get 400 ounces of it. And there weren't very many people who could afford to pull down 400 ounces of gold. So they say, as practical monetary devices, there is little difference between the gold bullion and the gold coin standard. I beg to differ. Under a gold coin standard, at least the general public was allowed to go get a piece of gold, even if it was only a $1 weight of it. Under a gold bullion standard, only the super rich could get the gold. They're moving in the direction, as you can see, because countries move from gold coin to gold bullion standard. They're moving in the direction of taking the gold away from the people. Okay, the third standard. This was the third step in this confiscatory scheme. This is the most vague description of a standard that these two authors and an economist who is the advising editor, if you will, this is the most vague one that they're going to explain, which is not really going to be an explanation, but I'll read it anyway. The gold exchange standard. Quote, sometimes a nation not on the gold standard arranges for its citizens or itself to make payments for imports of goods and services in money that is equal in value to gold. Well, what would be equal in value to gold? Well, if a country was using silver, like in the United States, then $1 of silver in the United States would have been equal in value of gold so long as you had $16 of silver. And that was considered to be equal in psychological value to $1 of gold, which was a much smaller coin. And we've already covered that in the previous broadcast. And you've seen those in the visual aids. An arrangement, I like that word, an arrangement is made whereby the nation not on the gold standard can convert its money. Well, what were countries using as money? Most countries were not using very much as money. They were using IOUs, dishonored IOUs even, as if they were money. But they could convert those into the money of a nation that is on the gold standard at a certain rate of exchange. To illustrate the principle involved in such a gold exchange standard, suppose that the United States is on the gold standard and that the government of the Philippines is not. Suppose further that the Central Bank of the Philippines makes a deposit in the New York Bank, and that the New York Bank agrees to buy or sell Philippine pesos. I wonder what the deposit was. Going to buy or sell Philippine pesos at the rate of P2, which would be 2 pesos, for $1. I would ask a question. $1 of what was the bank going to buy? 2 pesos. I could almost offer 100 pounds of free money even back in those days. But I will make an offer of 100 pounds of free money today. $1 of what? To buy 2 pesos. You can identify that, I'll give you 100 pounds of it absolutely free. Quoting Hasek and Dodd and Hasek again, quote, then, as long as other nations have faith in the arrangement, Philippine money, or currency, now you know they're talking about paper here, used in international trade, bears a constant, I like that word, constant relationship to gold because it is exchangeable at a fixed rate for American money, which is based on gold. So American money wasn't gold. In fact, American money wasn't even silver. Okay? And the value of that so-called American money continued to decline. And if you look at the chart, you'll notice that Federal Reserve notes, which most people erroneously call money, are now worth no more than 3% of what they were worth back in 1914. So that's quite a depreciation in almost 100 years. So where is the constant? Where is the stability in this sort of a system? What we're doing is we're hitching our wagon to a moving object, and that moving object doesn't even represent anything tangible. So they go on to say that at times certain nations have found it expedient to arrange a gold exchange standard, but the disadvantages of such a standard have eventually offset its advantages. I'm going to read just the last sentence. There's not too much in the paragraph preceding this. But for 30 years or more, wars and unsettled conditions in foreign trade have made the simpler form of the gold standard impracticable. The simpler form of the gold standard was the gold coin standard, and then the gold bullion standard. Why were the simpler forms unworkable? Well, because there was not enough gold to cover the ocean of IOUs that were created by war and those unsettled conditions, and they had to abandon the use of gold coins. There were too many IOUs that couldn't pay. Was the problem gold, or was the problem that somebody was creating too many IOUs and trying to pass them as if they were valid? You know, we can go back further in time to 1935 and still find 3 different gold standards spoken of. And this from Professor Edwin W. Kemmerer in his book, Money, 1935. And we will turn to page 70, where he speaks of the gold coin standard. I'll quote just a little bit here. Under the gold coin standard, the unit of value is the value of a fixed quantity of gold in a free gold market. And this gold is coined without appreciable coinage charge into money, which circulates freely. For example, in the United States in 1932, the unit of value was the gold dollar, consisting of 25.8 grains of gold, 0.900 fine. This dollar was coined in gold pieces of the denominations of $2. Well, just a minute now. This dollar was coined in gold pieces of the denominations of $2.50, $5, $10, and $20. How do you coin a dollar as $20? When is a dollar $20? When is a dollar $10? A dollar is not $20. A dollar is a dollar. A dollar is a weight of gold and silver. But you see, he's turned the dollar into something, I guess, in the way of a tangible. And so you can have a dollar being $2.50, $5, $10, and $20. The language is being turned on its head. He says anyone could take standard gold bullion to any American mint and have it coined into gold coin. Okay, that's fine. And receive for his bullion the full amount of the coin into which it was coined, less the above-mentioned charges. There was a seigniorage charge. You could get around that seigniorage charge if you were willing to wait a little bit, I think. And you could just swap bullion for coin. But I think if you made the demand immediate, they could charge you something like 0.5%, if I recall, from the Coinage Act of April 2nd, 1792. They said, furthermore, owners of standard gold bars, which would be 90% pure, could sell them at the practical gold parity for Federal Reserve notes at any of our 12 Federal Reserve banks. Can you imagine that? Well, first off, you can't sell gold for a note. A note can buy, gold can buy the note, but notes can't buy the gold. And the notes began being only 40% redeemable in gold. So how could you possibly be selling gold bars for notes that could only claim 40% gold that was supposedly on deposit at the Federal Reserve? If you did that, you go to prison. Now, Professor Kemmerer on page 80 speaks of the gold bullion standard. I'll just take a few excerpts. During the decade following the war, he means World War I, because this was written in 1935, when most of the world returned to the gold standard, many countries, including Great Britain, substituted for the gold coin standard the so-called gold bullion standard. He goes on. The paper money, no such thing, of the country is usually made interchangeable with gold bullion in the form of gold bars at one or more central offices. Redemption is usually authorized only in substantial amounts. I guess it would be, because that 400-ounce requirement means that you'd be paying somewhere close to $750,000 to get a 400-ounce bar at today's so-called price, which highlights my statement earlier on about the difference between how many dollars worth of gold, or the price of gold, versus a dollar weight of gold. One changes and the other one doesn't. I was talking about these three different gold standards, and we were looking at Professor Edwin Kemmerer's book, Money. I only extracted a couple sentences out of each of the first two standards, one being the gold coin and the other being the gold bullion standard. Professor Kemmerer defines basically the gold coin standard in 2 pages between page 70 and 72. The gold bullion standard only requires about a paragraph, or a little bit more than that, page 80 and 81. Actually, it's less than 1 page. When it comes to the gold exchange standard, however, he needs 15 pages to tell you what that means. And the explanation isn't terribly clear, but I will take an extract from page 154 to show you what the object, he says, is of the gold exchange standard, which is, quote, the extension of the principal advantages of the gold standard to countries not financially able or, for other reasons, not willing to use gold coins in any considerable degree as media of exchange, or to redeem their fiduciary money in gold bars. In other words, any country, any government that doesn't want to redeem its fiduciary money, which is money sustained by faith, that's the circulating credit instruments, it's really not money, then they adopt a gold exchange standard. That's the one everybody's on now. He says, the gold exchange standard is essentially a mechanism for providing a gold standard without a gold currency. Usually in gold exchange standard countries, the money in circulation is mostly paper and silver. Keep in mind, this was written in 1935. The so-called money in circulation in countries today is nothing. It's electronic. It's just raw numbers. Oh, they use pieces of paper, some of them. We don't even use very much paper to move the imaginary money here in the United States. Most of the transfers of imaginary money are now done by checks or electronic transfers with credit and debit cards. So the advanced economies of Europe, the Americas and beyond, abandoned a variety of gold coin standards where, in the United States, for example, redemption of Fed notes by the Federal Reserve banks varied from a 40% possibility starting in 1914, then 25% beginning in 1945, and finally no possibility for redemption, 0%, by 1968. Even state-chartered banks of the 1800s often operated on a 25% legal monetary reserve, gold and silver, for redemption of their notes, with most of the socialist countries in the world today adopting a gold bullion standard where government and banknotes were allegedly backed by, but no longer redeemable in, substantive money, with exceptions possibly made for the very wealthy holders of public debt instruments in excess of certain minimums, subject to later revision, of course, like a 400-ounce minimum of gold in the UK after World War I. Calculate how many dollars of bank credit that amounts to in today's figures. You're now looking at approximately $750,000, which is a far cry from $8,268 during the 1920s when the so-called official price of gold was $20.67 an ounce. This highlights what I meant by a dollar's worth of gold versus a dollar weight of gold. Well, I hear the music. Can you hear the music? Yeah, I can hear the music. Okay, this is the end of this installment. And again, we've begun a new series, and this is going to be dealing with economic myths, and this was part 1. I'm Bruce G. McCarthy, This has been Datum Line. Have a good day.